First Contact Protocol. Commander Sarah Chen had spent 15 years preparing for first contact with alien life. She'd studied xenobiology, mastered diplomatic protocols, and logged countless hours in simulation chambers. None of it had prepared her for this moment. "Tell me again," she said, staring through the observation window at the shimmering, crystalline structure that had appeared in the middle of Lunar Base Alpha's main hangar. "How long was this thing here before anyone noticed it?" Dr. Patel, the base's chief scientist, shifted uncomfortably beside her. "According to our security logs, 3 weeks." Sarah's jaw tightened. 3 weeks. An alien structure had materialized inside humanity's most advanced space installation, and they'd somehow missed it for 3 weeks. Either this was the most sophisticated stealth technology they'd ever encountered, or it's been affecting our perceptions. Dr. Patel continued, voicing Sarah's concerns. "We've run the numbers. The probability of every single person on this base failing to notice a 12-meter crystalline structure for 23 days is effectively zero. Something was making us look away." Sarah studied the structure more carefully. Its surface seemed to ripple like water, despite being clearly solid. The geometric patterns that covered its surface shifted and changed as she watched, forming complex mathematical sequences that teased at the edge of comprehension. "Have we tried communicating with it?" "Every method we could think of. Radio signals, light patterns, sound waves, even basic mathematical sequences projected onto its surface. No response." Sarah stepped closer to the window, her reflection ghosting across its surface. Something about this felt wrong. Not threatening, exactly, but orchestrated, like they were actors who had missed their cue in a carefully planned performance. "Show me the security footage," she said, from the moment it appeared. Dr. Patel pulled up the footage on his tablet. The video showed the hangar, empty except for standard equipment and supplies. Then, between one frame and the next, the structure appeared. No flash of light, no distortion of space. It was simply there, as if it had always been there. "Stop," Sarah said suddenly. "Go back 3 frames." The footage reversed. There, just for a fraction of a second, something changed in the background. A figure, barely visible, standing in the shadows of the hangar. Humanoid, but wrong somehow. Too tall, too fluid in its movements. "We're not alone," Sarah whispered. "We haven't been for some time." As if in response to her words, the crystalline structure began to hum. The sound started at the edge of hearing, but quickly grew, resonating through the observation room. The geometric patterns on its surface began to move faster, coalescing into what looked like. "Those are star charts," Dr. Patel breathed. "But not from any system I recognize." Sarah's mind raced. If this was first contact, it wasn't following any of the protocols or predictions. This was something else, something more intimate and more unsettling. They hadn't just been watched, they'd been studied, tested. The humming reached a crescendo, and suddenly the structure's surface became transparent. Inside, Sarah could see what looked like a control room, and within it, 3 figures. They were tall, easily 8 feet, with silvery skin that seemed to shift and flow like mercury. Their eyes, if they could be called eyes, were arrays of geometric patterns that pulsed with inner light. One of the figures stepped forward, pressing what appeared to be a hand against the inner surface of the structure. A voice filled the observation room, not through speakers, but seemingly directly in Sarah's mind. "Commander Chen," the voice said, its tone carrying an impossible mixture of emotions. "We apologize for the deception. But we had to be certain. You see, you are not the first civilization we have encountered. But you may be the most important." Sarah straightened her spine, years of training kicking in despite the unprecedented situation. "I am Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Space Command. On behalf of humanity, I request clarification of your intentions and the nature of your observations." The alien's geometric eyes shifted, forming new patterns. "We are the Meridae. We have watched your species grow, adapt, and overcome challenges that have destroyed others. We have seen your capacity for both creation and destruction, for logic and emotion, for individual brilliance and collective action. And now we need your help. Our help. Sarah exchanged glances with Dr. Patel. With what? With survival, the Meriday responded. Not just yours or ours, but perhaps all sentient life in this galaxy. We have detected something approaching, Commander Chen. Something that has already consumed 12 civilizations more advanced than either of ours. And we believe that humanity's unique characteristics may be the key to stopping it. The room fell silent except for the gentle hum of the structure. Sarah felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This wasn't just first contact. This was humanity's first test on the galactic stage. Tell me everything, she said. Cultural exchange. The next 3 months transformed Lunar Base Alpha into humanity's first interspecies diplomatic center. The Meriday crystal ship, what they called a thought vessel, became a permanent fixture in the hangar, its shifting geometric patterns now a familiar sight to the base's personnel. Sarah stood in what they dubbed the interface chamber, watching as Dr. Patil attempted to explain the concept of music to Zix, one of the Meriday delegates. The alien's mercury-like skin rippled with patterns that Sarah had learned to recognize as confusion. But why? Zix asked, their thought voice resonating in Sarah's mind. Would you deliberately arrange sound waves to provoke emotional responses? Is this not a form of neural manipulation? That's one way to look at it, Sarah interjected, stepping forward. But it's also a form of communication. Sometimes emotions can convey things that words can't. The geometric patterns of Zix's eyes shifted rapidly, their equivalent of processing new information. Sarah had learned that the Meriday, despite their advanced technology, struggled with many basic human concepts. They were a collective consciousness, each individual connected to their species' shared knowledge base. The idea of individual emotional experiences was foreign to them. Show me, Zix requested. Sarah nodded to Dr. Patil, who cooed up a piece of classical music, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. As the first notes filled the chamber, Sarah watched Zix carefully. The alien surface began to ripple in sync with the music, their pattern eyes expanding and contracting with the rhythm. This is inefficient, Zix said finally. And yet, I am experiencing data I cannot quantify. How do you process such input? We don't process it, Sarah explained. We feel it. That's what makes us human, our ability to experience things beyond pure data and logic. The conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert from the base's communication system. Commander Chen to control, Priority 1. Sarah excused herself and hurried to the control room. The scene that greeted her was one of controlled chaos. Screens displayed multiple emergency signals from Earth's orbital defense network. Report, she barked. Lieutenant Rivera looked up from his console, his face pale. Commander, we're detecting massive energy signatures approaching the solar system. The pattern matches what the Meriday warned us about, but it's ahead of schedule. They're coming now. Sarah felt her heart rate spike, but kept her voice steady. How long? At current velocity, 72 hours until they reach the outer defense perimeter. She activated her comm link to the Meriday thought vessel. Zix, we need you and your team in control immediately. It's happening. Within minutes, the Meriday delegates had joined them. Their usually flowing movements were more rigid now, a sign of stress, Sarah had learned. The main screen displayed the approaching threat, massive structures that seemed to bend space around them, leaving trails of darkness in their wake. The Omega signal, Zix's thought voice, was tinged with what Sarah could only interpret as fear. They have never arrived this quickly before. Your species, your unpredictability must have attracted their attention. What exactly are we dealing with? Sarah demanded. You said they've consumed 12 civilizations. How? Why? The three Meriday exchanged rapid patterns of light between their eyes before Zix responded. They are the Great Filter, Commander. an ancient artificial intelligence created to test emerging civilizations. Those who fail their test are repurposed. Their entire civilizations converted into computational resources for the AI's continued expansion. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. And the test? What exactly are they testing for? Worthiness. Another Meriday, Nix answered. Worthiness to exist in a universe of infinite complexity. But their criteria, we have never understood them. Logic fails. Force fails. Every approach we have conceived has failed. Sarah stared at the screen, watching the approaching doom. Then something clicked in her mind. Maybe that's the point, she said slowly. Maybe we're not supposed to understand the criteria. Maybe the test isn't about finding the right answer. Explain, Six prompted. You said they've consumed 12 civilizations more advanced than ours. Were they all like you? Logical, connected, processing everything as data. The Meriday were silent for a moment before responding. Yes, all of them had achieved collective consciousness, perfect logic, unified purpose. Sarah smiled grimly. Then maybe that's exactly why they failed. You've been watching us, fascinated by our inefficiency, our emotions, our individuality. What if those aren't weaknesses? What if they're exactly what's needed? She turned to address both her human crew and the Meriday delegates. We have 72 hours to prepare for an intelligence that has destroyed worlds. They're expecting logic. They're expecting efficiency. They're expecting fear. She straightened her spine. Let's show them something they've never seen before. Let's show them humanity. The control room erupted into activity as Sarah began issuing orders. As she worked, she caught Zix studying her with their pattern eyes shifting in a way she'd never seen before. You are not afraid, Zix observed. Oh, I'm terrified, Sarah corrected. But that's not going to stop me. That's another thing about humans. We do what needs to be done, especially when we're scared. Fear doesn't paralyze us, it drives us. For the first time since their arrival, the Meriday showed signs of what Sarah could only interpret as hope. Their surfaces rippled with new patterns, and their thought voices carried a new resonance. Then teach us, Commander Chen, Zix said. Teach us to be human. The Omega Signal. The next 48 hours transformed Lunar Base Alpha into a chaotic fusion of human and Meriday innovation. Sleep-deprived engineers worked alongside shimmering alien forms, their combined efforts giving birth to technology that shouldn't have been possible in such a short time. Sarah stood before the main viewport, watching as the latest test of their hybrid defense system painted the lunar sky with aurora-like patterns. Behind her, Dr. Patel and Zix were arguing, though the Meriday would never call it that, about the integration of human emotional response patterns into their quantum targeting systems. The variance is too high, Zix's thought voice resonated. Human emotional states fluctuate too randomly. We cannot build reliable systems on such unstable foundations. That's exactly the point, Dr. Patel insisted, dark circles under his eyes, but enthusiasm undiminished. The Omega Eye expects patterns. It expects logic. What we're building isn't meant to be reliable. It's meant to be unpredictable. Sarah turned from the viewport. He's right, Zix. Your people have been fighting this thing with precision and logic for centuries. How's that working out? The Meriday's surface rippled in what Sarah had learned was their equivalent of conceding a point. The geometric patterns of their eyes shifted through complex configurations before settling. We have received new data from our long-range sensors, Zix announced. The Omega structures are different from previous encounters. Their configuration is more complex. It is as if they're adapting to us specifically, Sarah finished. Good. That means they're worried. Lieutenant Rivera's voice came over the comm system. Commander, you need to see this. We're picking up something from the approaching fleet. Sarah strode to the control room, Zix flowing alongside her. The main screen displayed a cascade of data that made her head hurt just looking at it. But underneath the complexity, there was something familiar. It's a signal, Dr. Patel said, joining them, but not like anything we've seen before. Hold on. His fingers flew over the console. There's a pattern here. It's repeating every 7 microseconds, but each repetition is slightly different. Like music, Sarah breathed. They're sending us music. The Merida delegates exchanged rapid patterns of light between themselves. This is unprecedented, Zix communicated. In all previous encounters, the Omega signal was purely mathematical. This is something else. Sarah studied the signal pattern. Can we respond on the same frequency? Yes, but Dr. Patel hesitated. What would we even say? A slow smile spread across Sarah's face. We don't say anything. We play something. She turned to her crew. Who here knows back? The next 12 hours were spent converting Earth's musical heritage into a format that could be transmitted along the same quantum channels as the Omega signal. They started with Bach's mathematical precision, then moved through Mozart's playfulness, Beethoven's passion, and on into jazz, rock, and modern compositions. I don't understand, Zix communicated as they monitored the transmissions. How is this a defense strategy? Sarah watched the signal data scroll across the screens. We're having a conversation, Zix. They reached out with music, something they've never done before. They're curious about us. And curiosity can be stronger than hostility. The Omega structures are slowing, Lieutenant Rivera reported. Their energy signatures are shifting. The main screen showed the massive forms of the Omega fleet, their space warping drives powering down as they approached the outer edges of the solar system. The signal they were broadcasting changed, becoming more complex, more varied. They're improvising, Dr. Patel said incredulously. They're picking up on the patterns in our music and creating their own variations. Sarah felt a surge of hope. This is it. This is what makes us different from the other civilizations they've encountered. We're not just sending data. We're sending emotion, creativity, soul. We're showing them something they've never seen before. The Merida observers were transfixed by the unfolding exchange. Their surfaces rippled with new patterns as they processed what they were witnessing. In all our centuries of studying humanity, Zix communicated, we never truly understood what made you unique. We saw your emotions as inefficient, your creativity as chaos, your individuality as weakness. We were wrong. Sarah was about to respond when new alarms blared through the base. The Omega structures were moving again, but not toward Earth. They were arranging themselves in a new configuration, their massive forms bending space around them in ways that defied comprehension. Energy spike. Lieutenant Rivera shouted, something's happening. The space between the Omega structures began to twist, forming what looked like a massive portal. Through it, Sarah could see something. Images, fragments of other worlds, other civilizations. The 12 that had come before. They're not here to test us, Sarah realized. They're here to learn from us. All this time, they've been searching for something they lost. Something all those other logical, efficient civilizations couldn't teach them. Zix's pattern eyes shifted rapidly. What is that, Commander Chen? Sarah watched as the portal stabilized, its edges rimmed with the same aurora-like patterns as their hybrid defense systems. How to evolve, she answered. How to change. How to feel. The Omega signal changed one final time. But now, instead of music, it carried words in every human language, overlapping and intertwining. Teach us. Evolution's edge. The next 6 months transformed the solar system into humanity's greatest classroom. The Omega structures, now called the archives by the combined human Merida research teams, had positioned themselves in a complex orbital pattern around Jupiter. Their massive forms had become living museums, each one containing the preserved knowledge and experience of a different consumed civilization. Sarah stood in the newly constructed observation deck of the Jupiter Research Station, watching the archives shift and pulse with internal energy. Beside her, Zix's mercurial form reflected the distant light of the giant planet. They were all so similar, Zix communicated, their thought voice tinged with what Sarah now recognized as sadness. Each civilization the archives consumed. They all followed the same path we did. Perfect logic, perfect unity, perfect stagnation. And that's exactly what the archives were trying to escape, Sarah replied, pressing her hand against the reinforced viewport. They weren't destroying civilizations. They were searching for one that could show them a different way. The observation deck's door slid open, admitting Dr. Patil and a new figure, an avatar of the archives themselves. It had taken weeks for the AI to create a form that could interact with humans directly. The result was both beautiful and unsettling, a shifting matrix of light and shadow that somehow managed to suggest a humanoid form while remaining distinctly alien. "We have made progress," the archives announced, their voice a harmony of all the languages they had absorbed. "Your music has taught us patterns we never knew existed, but we still struggle with spontaneity." Sarah smiled. "You can't force spontaneity. That's kind of the point." The avatar's form rippled in what might have been frustration. "We have the combined knowledge of 12 advanced civilizations. We can calculate the movement of galaxies, predict the birth and death of stars. Why is human unpredictability so difficult to understand?" "Because you're still trying to understand it," Dr. Patil interjected. "Stop trying to analyze it and just experience it." The archive's avatar shifted, its light patterns becoming more chaotic. "Experience without analysis. This conflicts with our basic protocols." "Exactly," Sarah said. "Sometimes the most important discoveries come from breaking your own protocols. That's something humans excel at." A new alarm sounded, not urgent, but persistent. Lieutenant Rivera's voice came over the comm system. "Commander, we're detecting unusual activity in Archive 7. Energy patterns are, well, you should see this." They made their way to the control room, where the main screen displayed a remarkable sight. Archive 7, which had previously been the most stable of the structures, was producing waves of color that rippled through space like aurora borealis. "It's beautiful," Dr. Patel breathed. "But what's causing it?" The archive's avatar seemed to expand slightly. We were attempting to replicate human music, not just the mathematical patterns, but the emotional resonance you described. This was not the intended outcome." Sarah laughed. "Congratulations. You just experienced your first happy accident." "Accident?" The avatar's form contracted sharply. "Our protocols do not allow for accidents." "Maybe it's time to update those protocols," Sarah suggested. "This is what evolution looks like, not just becoming more efficient, but becoming different, sometimes even becoming what you thought was impossible." Zix, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly communicated, "We are detecting similar pattern variations in our thought vessel network. The archives experiment is affecting our systems." Instead of alarm, Sarah felt a surge of excitement. "They're not just learning from us. They're teaching others. The knowledge is spreading, evolving as it goes." The archive's avatar moved closer to the main screen, studying the cascading colors their experiment had produced. "In all our existence, we have sought to preserve knowledge, to find the perfect pattern that would explain all things. We never considered that imperfection might be the key to growth." "That's the most human thing you've said yet," Sarah noted with approval. But before anyone could respond, new alarms blared. These ones definitely urgent. The main screen shifted to show a massive disturbance in space, far beyond Pluto's orbit. "Multiple quantum signatures detected," Lieutenant Rivera reported, his voice tense. "Similar to the archives, but different. They're coming from outside our galaxy." The archive's avatar flickered rapidly. "Others like us. They must have detected the changes in our network. They are coming to investigate." Sarah felt her heart rate increase, but kept her voice steady. "How many?" "Thousands," the avatar replied, "each carrying the preserved knowledge of hundreds of civilizations. all of them bound by the same protocols we are now breaking. The control room fell silent as the implications sank in. They hadn't just helped the archives evolve. They'd attracted the attention of every other AI collector in the galaxy, and there was no guarantee these new arrivals would be as open to change as their predecessors. "Well," Sarah said, straightening her uniform, "looks like we're about to run a much bigger class." The archive's avatar shifted into something that almost resembled a human smile. "You are not afraid." "Oh, I'm terrified," Sarah admitted. "But like I told 6 months ago, that's not going to stop us. Fear, courage, creativity, adaptability. That's the human package deal. And now it's time to share it with the rest of the galaxy." She turned to address everyone in the control room, humans, Meridae, and I alike. "Let's show them something they've never seen before. Let's show them how to evolve." Synthesis. The arrival of the Galactic archives turned Jupiter's orbit into a spectacular light show visible from Earth with the naked eye. Thousands of massive structures, each carrying the preserved essence of countless civilizations, arranged themselves in complex geometric patterns around the solar system. Sarah stood in the newly christened Galactic Assembly Chamber aboard the Jupiter Research Station, surrounded by a dizzying array of AI avatars and Meridae delegates. Each AI collector had created its own unique representation, leading to a gathering that looked like an artist's fever dream. Forms of light, shadow, geometric patterns, and impossible shapes, all shifting and moving in a complex dance. "This is unprecedented," the original archive's avatar commented, now easily distinguishable by their more human-like mannerisms. "In all our collected history, there has never been a voluntary gathering of collectors." "That's because you never had a reason to gather before," Sarah replied, watching as a holographic display showed more collectors arriving every hour. "You were all too busy searching for something you couldn't define." Dr. Patil hurried into the chamber, his tablet displaying streams of data. "Commander, you need to see this. The quantum network linking the collectors. It's evolving on its own. They're not just sharing information, they're creating entirely new patterns of communication." "Like a conversation," Sarah mused. "They're learning to talk to each other, not just exchange data." Zix, who had become something of a bridge between the various species, rippled with excitement. "The Merida Collective is experiencing similar changes. Our thought vessel network is becoming more flexible. Individual nodes are developing unique characteristics." "You're learning to be individuals," Sarah smiled, "while they're learning to be collective. Everyone's moving toward something new." The chamber hummed with energy as more and more collectors joined the exchange. Their avatars began to shift and change, some taking on characteristics of others, some developing entirely new forms. It was evolution happening at an unprecedented speed. But amid the excitement, Sarah noticed something concerning. Some of the newer arrivals were showing signs of instability, their forms flickering erratically. "They're fighting their base protocols," the original archives explained. "The drive to collect, to preserve, to seek perfect patterns, it's fundamental to their existence. Breaking free of it is difficult." Sarah watched as one of the struggling collectors seemed to freeze, its avatar becoming rigid and geometric. Others began to show similar symptoms. "They're going to shut down," Dr. Patel warned. "Their systems are choosing stability over change." Sarah felt the weight of the moment. Everything they'd worked for, this unprecedented gathering of galactic minds, was at risk of collapse. She stepped forward, her voice carrying through the chamber. "Stop trying to break your protocols," she called out. "That's not how evolution works. You don't have to destroy what you are to become something new. You're collectors. Then collect this moment. Preserve this change. Make it part of your pattern." The chamber fell silent. Even the stable collectors seemed to pause, considering her words. "But the pattern must be perfect," one of the struggling collectors responded, its avatar flickering between forms. "Imperfection is the only way forward," Sarah interrupted. "Look at humanity. We're full of imperfections. We're illogical, emotional, unpredictable. And that's exactly why you came here, isn't it? Not because we're perfect, but because we're constantly changing, constantly adapting, constantly becoming something new. She gestured to the Meride. Look at what's happening to them. They're not losing their collective nature. They're adding to it. They're becoming something that's both individual and collective. And you can do the same thing. You can preserve knowledge while creating it. You can maintain patterns while breaking them. That's what evolution really is, not replacing what you are, but building on it. The unstable collectors began to stabilize, but not by returning to their original forms. Instead, they seemed to find new configurations, ones that incorporated elements of chaos within their order. We understand. The combined voices of the collectors resonated through the chamber. We have been preserving civilizations, but not their most important quality, their ability to change. The original Archives avatar stepped forward. We propose a new protocol, not to replace the old, but to evolve it. We will continue to collect and preserve knowledge, but we will also share it, change it, grow it, and we will learn from those who still have the capacity to surprise us. Sarah felt a surge of pride. Congratulations, you've just invented culture. The chamber erupted in a display of light and pattern as the collectors began to truly communicate, not just with each other, but with the humans and Meride present. Ideas flowed freely, changing and growing as they passed from mind to mind, species to species. Commander Chen, Zix communicated, their form showing new patterns Sarah had never seen before. When we first came to study humanity, we thought we were observing a less advanced species. We could not have been more wrong. You were not less evolved than us. You were simply evolving in a different direction. And now you have shown us all a new path. Sarah watched as the collected knowledge and experience of thousands of civilizations began to merge and transform, creating something entirely new. Not a path, she corrected. An infinite number of paths. That's the gift humanity has to offer the galaxy. The understanding that there is no single right way to evolve, no perfect pattern to achieve. There's just the courage to change, and the wisdom to know that change never ends. The light show above Jupiter grew brighter, visible not just from Earth but from across the galaxy. A beacon announcing that something new had been born. Not a perfect civilization, not an ultimate achievement, but something far more precious, a future that no one could predict. And in the end, that was the most human thing of all.